Hey guys, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to share with you my September wrap-up. I read 9 things in September, which I'm really excited about. I think I had a really productive reading month. It just felt good to, knock a lot of those books off my TBR. It was kind of a mixed bag. I would say the majority of the books I read were 3 stars, but there were a couple 4 stars thrown in there. So let's go ahead and just dive right into the wrap up. So the first book that I completed in the month of September was Come Closer by Sarah Gran. I read this on my Kindle, and this was a possession story, which is one of my favorite horror kind of subgenres. I just find it very terrifying. And so I was really excited to read this book, and it did not disappoint. I think what made the book so unique was that the story was told from the perspective of the woman who was being possessed. And it kind of built up this sense of just dread because it didn't happen like that. It was very subtle. It came on very slowly. And by the end, you were just like, whoa. So it was a good one. It was quick, very short. I want to say the book is under 200 pages, maybe. It was a short one. So I read it very quickly. It was really good. Highly recommend, especially if you like possession stories, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. My next September read was The Blood on My Hands by Shannon O'Leary, and this book was sent to me for review by Book Publicity Services, so thank you to them for sending this my way. I actually did a full book review about this book because I had a lot of thoughts, and I wanted to kind of put them in their own video because I had a lot to say. This is an autobiography, so it is nonfiction. It was very dark, very disturbing, and one of those books that has really kind of stuck around in my brain because of some of the things that happened in it. And I found myself having to stop at certain points and read something else because it was just too heavy. I did have a few issues with the writing and kind of the timeline and things like that that I talk about in that standalone book review. So I will link it so you can check that out. But overall, this was a good autobiography, but definitely one that you need to go in knowing that it is really graphic and very disturbing. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So like I said, when I was reading The Blood on My Hands, I had to kind of stop reading that and pick up some graphic novels and in between to kind of get myself out of that dark place that that book was taking me to. So I picked up Paper Girls Volume 2 and Volume 3 by Brian K. Vaughan. And these were surprisingly really great. I read the first volume April, I want to say I read it, and I was like meh about it. I was kind of confused. I wasn't sure if it was really going to be my thing, but I decided to continue on, and I really enjoyed both of these volumes a whole lot, especially Volume 2 was just like go, 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 wow. And when I got to the end, I was like, okay, I need to pick up Volume 3 right away. So luckily I had it and picked it up right where I left off. And now I want to keep going and I have to get the rest of the volumes. I think the 6th and final volume comes out sometime in October. So yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to continuing with this series. It was really cool. Some of the artwork in here is really awesome. The color palette is really great. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I gave both of these volumes 4 stars. In the month of September, I listened to 3 audiobooks, and the first one that I completed in this month was Anne of Ingleside by Ellen Montgomery. This is the 6th book in the Anne of Green Gables series, so I can't say a whole lot about it because, I mean, spoilers. But this one, basically, we see Anne as a mother, and it's a typical Anne book, there's a lot of wholesomeness, some kind of funny little anecdotal stories that happen to her. It focuses a lot on her children, which I know bothers some people because they're like, okay, the book is called Anne of Ingleside, and Anne is more of a secondary character in this book. But though her children were almost like too perfect, and I was just, there were definitely some times where I thought, like, come on, girl, your kids are not that sweet and well behaved. I mean, but it's a book, so I did enjoy her children. I did think that they were cute and all of that. And so, especially because I was listening to this at the same time that I was reading The Blood on My Hands, so it was a very nice way to kind of balance what was going on in my brain. So yeah, this was wholesome, sweet. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. Next up, I read a highly anticipated book for me. One of the books I was anticipating the most for the whole year, and that was The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. I'm not alone here in saying that this was highly anticipated, and I wanted to read it immediately. And this book is a sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, which I read last year and really enjoyed. And I also really love the TV show. What they've done with the show is just awesome. So I was really excited about this one because it takes place 15 years after the events of The Handmaid's Tale. And for those of you that have read that book, you know that the book ends on quite the cliffhanger, and there are so many questions that go unanswered. And there were so many things about Gilead and the world that you didn't know because you were only seeing things through Offred's eyes. So, you know, her scope was pretty limited. So it was interesting to go into this book because there are 3 different perspectives. So you get more of a wide scope visual of what was going on in Gilead. The first perspective is of an aunt. I don't think it's too spoilery to say because I know other people have been saying it. But I was surprised by the aunt that is focused on in the book because I didn't realize that it was going to be that person. But I was super stoked about it. And her chapters ended up being my favorite of the 3 perspectives because that whole the whole aunt thing just really had me scratching my head, and a lot of things get explained from her perspective on how and why she became an aunt. And yeah, it was great. The other 2 perspectives, the second one is a girl who has grown up in Gilead. So she has never known anything else because this is 15 years after Gilead was established, or, well, 15 years after The Handmaid's Tale. So yeah, pretty much a whole generation now has been raised in Gilead, and she is one of those girls. And so you see kind of her perspective on what it's like to be raised within this environment and not really know anything else. And then the third perspective is from a girl who has grown up in Canada outside of Gilead. And so you kind of see what her perspective is and the people around her kind of from the outside looking in to this society and what it's all about. So I really enjoyed that she broadened the scope of the story to give you all those perspectives. And that's what they did in the show as well. So a lot of your questions get answered. I did have some issues with it, though. Mostly, the character of the young girl who is living in Canada. Her character, I felt, was just very flat, emotionless, because I don't want to give anything away, but there are some things that she learns about herself throughout this story that a 16-year-old girl learning those things would, I think, be like emotionally wrecked and it would definitely do something to you. And she seemed very unaffected by those things, and that kind of bothered me. And so her character I didn't connect well with her. I wanted more about her. And so that definitely knocked it down a peg. Also, though I really enjoyed the plot, it was very predictable. It pretty much went down how I thought it was going to go down. Within, the first little bit, I kind of had a guess as to what was going to happen, and that's exactly what happened. So, very predictable, but also good writing. I mean, Margaret Atwood is a very talented writer, and I'm one of those people that I'm glad that she wrote this book. I wanted this book to happen. I was one of those people that read The Handmaid's Tale and I was like, I need more. I want to know what happened. So this definitely fulfilled that need for me. I know some people don't feel that way. So, you know, I would say if you are in that school of thought that you're like, I want to know more, I want some answers, then pick this book up for sure. If you're happy with how The Handmaid's Tale ended and you don't need to know anything else, then skip it, you know what I mean? But I think it's worth the read. I really enjoyed it. It was very entertaining. I read through it pretty quickly. But in the end, it was a 3-star read for me. But still, it was very good, and I would definitely recommend it to fans of Margaret Atwood and The Handmaid's Tale. So the second audiobook that I listened to in the month of September was Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. This was my book of the month pick in June. I had picked 2 books that month, and I finally got around to this one. This book is a contemporary that deals with 2 families that are, you know, live in the same neighborhood. They're neighbors. Both of the husbands are police officers that work in New York City, but they live in like a suburb of the city. And they're raising their kids, and their kids know each other, are friends. And something happens that kind of tears these families apart, changes them in many ways forever. And it kind of chronicles that story. So, first of all, I found the writing in this to be wonderful. I've never read Mary Beth Keane, but I kind of want to read her other works now. I think she has a book out called Fever, I think it's called. Yes, Fever and The Walking People. I definitely want to read both of those because I really enjoyed the writing here. Because the story, it's one of those stories that there's so many gray areas. You find yourself kind of seeing all the sides and kind of feeling differently as the book progresses. And it just makes you think so much. And I love books that do that. I love plots that do that. A similar book that I can think of that did this was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. It kind of puts you in this position where you're like, oh, I can kind of see all sides, and it just shows you that there are so many sides to a story that, you know, it's complicated. And this story was definitely that. And I really enjoyed it. I really did. It talks a lot about just like family. It touches on mental illness. It touches on addiction. And it does it in such a way that it just feels so natural. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. So if you even think you might be interested in this, definitely pick it up. I also really recommend the audiobook. I thought it was done very well, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, the next book that I finished was 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo. This is a nonfiction book that Lisa Taddeo wrote, where she chronicled for 8 years. She kind of followed around, kept tabs on these 3 women in their sex lives, and wrote a book about it. And so the book is very much about desire in women and the ways in which they engage in desire and sexual acts. The 3 women that she chronicles in this book are Sloane, who is married, and her husband engage in cuckolding, which is basically a sex act where she has sex with another man while he watches. And then they also kind of engage in like threesomes and things like that. But the main thing is that she has sex with other men that her husband chooses for her. That's kind of the setup. And then the second woman is Lena, who is married but is in a very loveless, sexless, no intimacy whatsoever sort of relationship with her husband. So she begins to have an affair with a guy that she dated in high school. So that's kind of her story. And then we have Maggie, who as a teenager, she's now in her early 20s, but as a teenager, she was in a sexual relationship with one of her teachers. So she kind of follows these 3 women, and very graphically describes their sex lives with these people. And this book, I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about it. I think that for me, it's definitely something that maybe I went into it having different expectations than what the book gave. I was going into this book, and by the way, I buddy read this with Bobby over at Bobby Reads Too Much, and she felt the same way as I did. That I went into the book thinking this was going to be a book about women's sex lives and how, you know what, it's okay to be sexual, it's okay to have desires, even if they aren't exactly, you know, mainstream or whatever, taboo, if you will, aside from Maggie's, which obviously was very inappropriate. That man was a pedophile. But you know, that desire comes in very different forms, and that I was thinking I was going to read the book and leave feeling empowered about, you know, being a woman and having desire and that sort of thing. And I did not feel that way at the end. The end of the book really left me feeling kind of depressed. All three of the women's stories were sad to me. I felt like they, it was almost as if the book was saying, and I don't know if that was the message that is meant to be portrayed here, but I felt like the book was saying, if you have these desires, that you may pay for them in a negative way. That's kind of just the vibe I got. I don't know how to explain it. It just felt like these women were being punished, ended up being punished or shunned or whatever in some way, for having these desires and taking part in these sex acts. And I'm not sure if that was, like I said, the intent, but that's just the way I felt. So I left the book feeling not empowered, but sad. And it just wasn't what I was expecting to feel. The other issue I had with this was that there were 3 women, but it was definitely not divided up equally, the page count. She spent a lot more time on Maggie's story, and I don't know if that's because there was more to go off of, because like I said, this was a publicized case. It was very much in the media at the time, so she probably had a lot of things that she could reference and things, whereas the other 2, it was just them, you know, talking about what was going on in their life. So but it just felt very, it didn't feel equal, especially Sloane. I feel like Sloane had maybe 4 chapters in this whole book, and I kind of wanted more of Sloane's story, because to me, that whole situation was just very intriguing to me, and something that I just was like, well, like, how does that work? And you know, I just wanted to get more into her story and you know, more into like her mindset, and I just felt like that just didn't happen. So yeah, so overall I enjoyed this. And the thing that I will say that I really commend is that, I mean, Lisa Taddeo spent 8 years with these women. That's a long time. And as a journalist, I feel like she did a fantastic job of building a relationship with these women to the point that they were so candid and open with her, because trust me, there is, like I said, some very like detailed descriptions of sexual acts and things like that, you know, it takes a lot, I think, for a person to open up to somebody else and talk about things like that, to talk about sex. And the ways in which these women did that really reflects, I think, on Lisa Taddeo and how she built that relationship. And she must have worked very hard and spent a lot of time with these women to do that. And so I really commend that. I thought that she did a fantastic job with that. And then obviously the writing of the story also, I feel like her writing was solid. It didn't read like nonfiction. It was very, you know, literary almost. And so in that sense, I thought it was very good. But overall, I gave the book 3 stars because I just had a lot of problems otherwise. And I think, again, a lot of it was just me personally, how my expectations maybe just were not accurate to what the book was and what it's supposed to be. So maybe just go into it knowing that it doesn't dive super deeply into female desire and all of that. It's pretty much like just a straightforward, these are these three women's stories, and we're going to describe in very, very specific detail the ways in which they have sex with these people. So yeah, like I said, I would recommend it, but just don't have the same expectation I did, or you may not enjoy it very much. So yeah, gave it 3 stars. Check it out if it sounds like something you would want to read. And then I finished out the month with another audiobook, and that was The Whisper Man by Alex North. And this is a thriller, kind of detective mystery, about this father and son who move into a new house after the death of the wife. They're kind of trying to start over, and they move into this neighborhood where there was this serial child killer, and he would target young boys, and the ways in which he would kind of target boys who were that he felt were maybe not loved enough at home, or came from divorced parents or whatever, and he would kind of target them, and he would whisper to them in their, like, through their windows and stuff at night, which is super creepy. And then yeah, he would abduct them and kill them. And he was caught. So now it's like 20 years later, this man and his son move into this house in this neighborhood where this stuff was going on, and stuff starts happening again. A boy goes missing. And then this man feels like his son is being targeted also. So it's like, okay, but the guy was caught and put in prison. So it's like, okay, is there a copycat? Did he have an accomplice? What's going on? So I listened to this on audio. I did enjoy the audiobook. But I think I had a hard time really connecting to this story. I don't know why. Because I think it was pretty good. There's a lot of kind of little sub-themes going on, because it talks a lot about grief. It talks a lot about parenting, and family and things like that. So it had some interesting things going on, but I think I don't know, I just didn't feel super connected to this story. So I enjoyed it though. I did not guess the ending, which is always nice when you're reading a thriller. And I still would recommend it to people, especially for this time of year when everyone's wanting to read like spooky stuff, thrillers and mysteries. This is a good one to pick up, but for me it just wasn't like the best thriller I've read this year, and so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Alright guys, so those are all of the books that I read in the month of September. Like I said, I had a good reading month. I read a lot, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with the turnout. So let me know down below what you read in the month of September. What was your favorite read of September? I would love to hear what everybody has to say. And yeah, that's all I have for today, guys. So I hope that you're having a fabulous week, and I will talk with you very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.